Today we're going to discuss the opening statements. Now, the opening statements is going to paint a blueprint or give us a blueprint on how this case or how we should navigate through this court case. And the tone is going to be set during this time. Now, when I came there that day, one of the things I have always done, especially since I've been flying, is when I get to work, despite what's happening in the world events, you're shoving folks with different backgrounds that come on the aircraft. My job is to keep you safe and provide customer service. My job is not to sit there to judge you, how you look, how you react, how you do certain things. My job is to make sure that you are safe and provide customer service. Also, being a referee, my job is to call any fouls or penalties that are committed, whether I'm on a football field or a basketball court. So when I get to court, when I had to go to court and get to court every single day, I came there with an open mind of this is what the state and the defense team is presenting to me. And this is what they have done their research on. These are the facts. And I'm supposed to make a fair judgment on that along with my colleagues that are sitting at jury pool. So that very first day, get to court, not knowing what to expect. We get in and Judge Glanville says, all rise. And we come in, we sit down. This is our first time seeing the defense team and the defendants. It's our first time seeing the state since the last time. And I remember the date that we started because that was my sister's birthday. So I spent my sister's birthday in court. So we sit down and District Attorney Love comes up and presents on behalf of the state. And one thing that's memorable about that is that she described YSL as a gang that pretty much terrorized the Atlanta metro area. And she described what they did, but most of all, she described them as, if I'm not mistaken, a pack of wolves, and where Jeffrey Williams is at the very top. Now we have a storyline. Now we have, okay, then this is who we're dealing with, and these are the defendants, and everything was being coordinated through the main wolf of the pack, and that was Jeffrey Williams. And pretty much what she was stating was that YSL, the gang itself, was pretty much organized crime, organizing crime within the whole entire city. They were committing armed robberies. They were distributing and benefiting off of drug sales, narcotics, but also they were committing murder as well. Now, to the families who lost loved ones from the murders that took place, I empathize with you. I don't ever want you to think that the jury and myself did not empathize with any of you all during those times, and I hope that you're able to have closure and seek justice for your loved ones that were lost. I mean, like I said, I don't ever want you to think that we bypassed any of the murders. We definitely do empathize with you, including myself. But this is what District Attorney Love was presenting to us during that time. And so now we have an understanding on how YSL, the gang, was operating and how Jeffrey Williams was pretty much the top of the head boss during this time, or head the pack. Then the defense comes in and they presented their argument. And two attorneys that actually helped me to navigate through this court case was attorney Abbott, who was DeMonte Kendrick's attorney, and also D. Williams. And we'll get to them shortly. But defense comes up, and we have attorney Shard present on behalf of Shannon Stillwell. And pretty much what he stated was that what we'll hear is a lot of insufficiencies inconsistencies within this particular trial. And we also see that there's like not enough sufficient evidence and that there are too many flaws, the what if scenarios, especially when crimes are already committed and individuals already served their time for committing those crimes. So Attorney Sharp states that Shannon Stillwell's upbringing and what he had to do to survive. Now, in my mind, I'm sitting here saying, okay, then I want to know everyone's story. How did they get to where we are right now? I grew up in a two-parent home. My two sisters and I, grew up in the suburbs in North Carolina. My parents made sure they took care of us. My parents are still married to this day. The top two things that my parents made sure that we stay strong on was our faith in God, as well as getting an education. And my mom's a teacher, and she's retiring this year. And no matter what was going on, she made sure that we stayed active in school, made good grades, and continue our education and be successful in our own way in today's society. I don't know these individuals. I don't know their background, but everyone doesn't have that ability or that upbringing. But it doesn't mean they're not going to be a failure in society. The one of the top things that people can never take away from you is your knowledge. Knowledge is power. And it sometimes breaks my heart when there are dropouts. And it does break my heart when folks drop out before they receive their high school diploma, especially in today's society, because you do get marginalized in one particular area. It doesn't mean that you're dumb, doesn't mean that you're not smart. Just the fact of is that school was not pushed hard, or you weren't that enthusiastic to be in school based on many reasons. But I'm not going to judge you for that at all. So we'll talk more about that during the witness episode. But I hated to see that some of these guys did not finish school. And I hope that, especially now, that kids go to school, get your education, and if you want to do something else and not go to college, that's on you. At least you got your high school diploma. If you do want to continue your education, do something that you really love doing. Go after what you really like to do. If you want to continue on to college, yeah, college may be expensive, but it's going to be an investment for you, because at the end of the day, when these guys got in trouble with the law, it was disheartening to sometimes see how the questions during interrogation, as well as some of the language that was inside of the legal document, they couldn't understand. And had they had a little bit of knowledge as far as like, this is what this statement reads, this is what this section reads, this is what the indictment stated, it would have been beneficial for them to sometimes be able to go home, even though that they did something wrong or they're involved in something. It would have not allowed them to be held down for a long period of time. So get the education. just get your education. One of my professors in undergrad, chairperson, Dr. Mosley, used to always tell us reading is fundamental. And if you don't understand something, find the facts, go look for it, do your investigation, and draw your own conclusion yourself. And you have questions, talk to people who are knowledgeable in that and knowledgeable inside that. And what I saw with all these attorneys in general during this court case, and when this is before the plea deals, not knowing anybody's background, is that a lot of the defense teams tried their best to make sure they provide the utmost service to these individuals. That's what they were doing. Now the state did the same exact thing, and the state did kind of did some things I did not like, which we'll talk about later on. But the defense team tried to do their very best with their clients, and that's what any defense team would do for for any of the defendants. So we know that Shannon Stillwell, we know his upbringing, understand that he did what he did to provide for his family, and they try to tie him to a murder that, quite frankly, we'll talk more about on the horrific Donovan Thomas murder that hit here in the community in Atlanta, Georgia. When we had Attorney Still that came up and spoke about Jeffrey Williams and his upbringing, and we now have a picture of how he was raised and his community and his family, and we understand about the McDonald's. We understood about the Green Store, of course, and we understand about the phone records. So we're now getting an idea of who Young Thug slash Jeffrey Williams is and was. And I will say that Attorney Still pretty much gave us an entire blueprint of his entire trial, because he never veered off to the left or to the right. Anytime the state questioned Attorney Still, it was almost as though playing chess. It was always a checkmate every single time, because he knew what he was talking about. And that was quite interesting to how he maneuvered this entire case. But he painted gave us a blueprint on this court case, and we now understand how Jeffrey Williams, his background is, the clothing that he had to share with the different family members. I get that there are people in communities who may not be able to afford certain things. I mean, I'm not from Atlanta, Georgia, but one thing I do appreciate is when I'm refereeing football or basketball and I'm going to different schools, some schools are well polished, to the program, athletic program, to the facilities. And then some schools may not have that for various reasons, but it doesn't mean that the love is not there. It doesn't mean that the community is not there. Just the fact of you have, just in our society, the have and have nots. And that's where my political side gets in. And I want the best for people. Sometimes, people are dealt with the bad hand in life and they're having to struggle and work twice as hard to get to the very top. And that's just where we are today. I mean, it's just, so I get where he was coming from. I understood where he was coming from. When I was in school, undergrad, I went to an HBCU, North Carolina State University, and I got schooled on about people's backgrounds. I knew it back in my community, at my school, and being heavily involved in my community back at home. But when I got to college, there were some people who struggled, and they told me their story. And that was my first insight of dealing with adults who just didn't have anything. And for those who are familiar with State University in Greensboro, my dorm room I was in Curtis Hall my my freshman year, right in front of the cafeteria. I was on the first floor. And every week we used to have movie nights in one of our friends' dorm room. We all get together and we'll watch pretty much black movies, all because of me. Because I was, I'm not saying I was naive about it, but my mom was an age-appropriate person. Mind you, she's a teacher, so she would make sure that, hey, she shielded us from a lot of things. So, but it didn't mean that we were naive about society. And so when I got there, they were telling me their stories as far as like, yeah, the money that they received from the financial aid office, they sent it back home so their parents or their mother, father, whomever didn't have the lights cut off. They can have food, pay for a bill. So things like that. When I got to the courtroom and start hearing the background of some of these individuals, it played a huge role in my thinking. Give me the facts, give me both sides of it. I'll make my own decision. Also, when I got to the courtroom, not one side had one leg up than the other. I came there with an open mind, 50-50. So despite what the state was presenting, it didn't outweigh more than the defense. And despite what the defense was stating and their facts that they're presenting, didn't outweigh what the state was presenting. So I came there with an open mind. We get to D. Williams, and D. Williams was to the point and straightforward. But the one statement that she said in there was, she said, "This is not justice, this is a circus." Little did we know. I remember writing that down in my notepad, that would play a huge role as time went on during this court case. This is not justice, this is a circus. Then we get to Attorney Abbott, and I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But of course, he was Demonte Kendrick's attorney. And his opening statement played a huge role in how I navigated this court case because he referenced John Adams, the second president of the United States of America. And he referred to what he wrote in the Constitution, which stated that it is more important that innocence be protected, that is, that guilt should be punished. Once again, it is more important that innocence be protected, that it is that guilt should be punished. And so, what he was stating was he wanted to make sure we don't send innocent people to prison. How many times do we go out here and we judge people how they look, how they dress, how they talk? We see that in society to this day, and that kind of infuriates me because here I was, I grew up in North Carolina and wasn't in we grew up in a neighborhood that was, we were the only black family in our neighborhood. I'll put it that way. And the environment I grew in, my parents wanted to make sure that we were raised in a way that, yeah, we didn't have neighbors that looked just like us, but we're going to fix that because when you get out of public school from K through 12th grade, you're going to an HBCU. And to me, I was still naive about a lot of things. There's some things I just did not know. And pretty much I'll just go out and tell you, I had book smarts, but not a lot of street smarts. And and my parents were just there just to protect us. But once we left the nest and fly out into the world, then you're going to start learning some of the things that we taught you, take that with you. But the rest of it, you need to learn on your own. And that's what we did. And I always go back to being a flight attendant for, as my career now. And of course, I worked in politics a very long time. Is I cannot stress this hard. Every day when I get up to go to work, when I do fly around this world, no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what's going on, I'm there to provide safety and customer service. I don't care what you look like. I don't care how you talk. I don't care what you do, as long as it's, not bad. I'm not here to judge you because I want to learn from you. We already know the Northeast is different from the South, and you get to the Midwest and how they think and go out west towards the California region in the South where Texas is. Every part of this country, people are different. But what brings us together is when we actually have a conversation. Because we don't understand something doesn't mean that we have to be afraid of it. Just do your research, learn for yourself. And every day when I came to court, that is how I treated as, is that no matter, even though these 6 guys are sitting here in the courtroom based on what they allegedly have committed during that time, as my mind was thinking, I'm not here to judge you from what I don't know. I'm here to let the story unfold based on the facts that are presented from the state and based on the facts that the defense team has to present to me as well. And under law, you're innocent until proven guilty. Because as Attorney Abbott has stated, you want to make sure you don't send an innocent person to jail. Point blank. And I think that has to pretty much stick with us. And I also sit there and say is that sometimes, and I had to go in there and make sure that regardless of who was presenting that day, I didn't want to be distracted. And that is another major thing that sometimes people fail at, is that they're so focused on the shining object. This is what I want you to look at. But there's a whole nother world, there's a whole nother layer of things that quite frankly you're missing. And I revert back to the story of Aladdin that, watching as a kid, the cartoon Aladdin, and you saw that Aladdin, Jafar during that time was disguised, and he told Aladdin to go into the cave to retrieve something from him. And Abu, of course, comes in, and Abu and Aladdin are there, and they're searching around, and Abu sees this big shiny object, if I'm not mistaken. But they're there for a specific thing. But Abu touches it because he got distracted, and of course the cave caves in. When I go back, when I'm in court as a juror, I'm not there to be distracted. I don't care about the noise. I don't care about the feelings. What I do care about is what are you going to give me that's going to make sense, and let me decide on what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And we'll talk more about that through the witnesses and how there's a lot of distractions, but there's a bigger storyline that people were missing, and pretty much that it could have made or break the case in so many ways. And then attorney Abbott made a thing which was calling it, this is nothing but BS. He said this was nothing but a Krispy Kreme donut hole, and I think that stuck with most of us in the jury pool because we talked about it at the very end. But I kind of just chuckled because I was like, okay, then you have D. Williams made a statement earlier, and then you also have um, D. Williams talking about this being a circus, and you have Attorney Abbott talking about this is Krispy Kreme donut hole. I think that was pretty funny though. But his line of speech was pretty much, "Hey, this is you're going to see a lot of inconsistencies." And we get to Attorney Matthews about Marquavius Huey and talk about his upbringing. I'm glad that he finished school, and I'm glad that I'm glad that he finished school. And then I think he had two kids, a 4-year-old during that time and a 1-year-old. And he pretty much brought up in consideration of the cell towers, which played a major role in some of our decisions during our deliberation. We'll talk about that later on. But I want to say two things that is very important. Um, when it comes down to freedom of speech, we may not like certain things, what people say, but what brings us together is to have opposite views and then learn how to compromise and come together. And the biggest mistake I thought that the state did was to include the music lyrics as part of this court case. And I say that because it is a freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And we will dissect that when time is appropriate in a different episode. Music artists are creative and they express themselves through songs. And as a consumer, we buy the music and we listen to it. You can't marginalize and target a specific genre of music, in this case right here, hip hop, and saying that a crime was committed if there's no proof. And that proof comes in from an individual or individuals who are able to corroborate and who has sufficient evidence stating that this is what took place. Because if that's the case, then it's best for us to dissect every genre of music. And if something was acted upon or committed, then it should be upheld in a court of law. So, as these individuals, and Jeffrey was in some of his songs, if we're going to target the hip hop community for something because of a word in the lyrics, or there is a line inside there that says that something took place, there better be proof about it. Because to me, I think you're wasting people's time when you are saying something when people see these lyrics. I mean, I said to myself, not knowing what we would have to deliberate on at the very end, off the back, if music lyrics was going to be one of the things that we had to act upon, I was going to go to the First Amendment right. Sorry, I was going to go to the freedom of speech. That is what I was going to sit there and lead that to, because I think that it's a very slippery slope that does not have a good ending unless you have an expert, or unless there is full proof to corroborate that act was part of a crime. And I stand strong on that. As it comes to the RICO case, we know that act was established in 1970. I am not a full fan of it, flat out. The more I sat down during this case and we see that this was being charged under, I think that this court case should have been charged individually. But you're going down a slippery slope when you are saying that these individuals committed a crime if there is not sufficient proof. And I'll let attorney describe or dissect that, though. You can't bring a case up and expect for someone like me, because I mean, we all think differently, but to go by the emotions and saying this person's bad and XYZ, but there's not hard proof on something. You can't make a puzzle piece fit into a puzzle and think that reasonable doubt, which we, of course, we'll talk more about that, if there are too many what if scenarios. I think that this entire RICO case is dangerous, and it will put innocent people in jail if it's not presented in a court of law that makes sense to people, versus targeting specific individuals thinking that we put someone behind jail and off the streets when they had nothing to do with that particular case or that particular act. So we'll touch base on that a little bit. I know the attorneys, those who are experts in that area, can probably dissect a little bit more, but that's just how my mindset was thinking while I was sitting here in court during that time. On another note, the next episode, which will come out in probably like another 2 weeks or so, we're going to touch bases on the witnesses. Now, we're not going to go through all the witnesses. Some of them were important, some of them were not important. Some of them were extra, and some of them were not. Some of them were a distraction, and some of them were pretty much had their, what they provided made sense. But I will say that at the very beginning, the first three testimonies that we should have heard from was Detective Bill Knapp, Detective Everito, and Detective Kimberly Underwood. Those three would have laid out a perfect blueprint on this case and would have aligned with Attorney Steele this entire time. I mean, during the time that we were in court. Now, I don't question law enforcement in this particular case and how they present it. They were summoned, they came in to testify, and they were just doing their job. Let me just give that full disclaimer. I don't know them, they don't know me. And I'm not here to criticize their line of work, because they put their lives on the line each and every single day to protect the community that we all live in. And my job and the jury's and the other jurors' jobs was to follow the case as it was presented in court. That is all that we were doing. So I think Detective Bill Knapp did a great job. Detective Everito presented how she presented, but I think that the one that pretty much nailed the hammer on the nail was Detective Kimberly Underwood, because she came across as being authentic. She came across being well informed, and she knew the community very, very well. If I'm not mistaken, I think she's from the state of Georgia, and I think from London metro area. I have to go back and check and see. And I think that she works in different areas to some capacity, and then she retired and then came back as well. So I think that she presented her thought process very, very well, and those three individuals should have went. We should have heard those three first. So in the meantime, we're gonna stop it right here. Next time, we will dissect the different witnesses and go from there. So have a great day. If there's any comments that you want to write about, feel free. I'll try my best to try to include that on the next episode, and may have something question answer or response just to kind of figure out certain things, because I may have missed things. But I'm trying to make sure that I'm just giving you an idea of my thought process while I was sitting in court, and to let me tell you my side of the story to how I was thinking, and then we'll end pretty much during the deliberation, which will be like the very last episode. But there are another few episodes in between before we get to that point. So enjoy your day, and we'll talk real soon.